tuning in. I'm Craig Lieberman, and I've been tinkering on cars since 1980. I've owned more than 40 cars in my life. Some were heroes, some were zeros. But never in my wildest dreams would I ever guess that 3 of my cars would go on to star in a motion picture franchise. My Supra, my GTR, and my Maxima all had starring roles in Universal's Fast and Furious movies. Over the next 3 years, I'd served Universal as a technical advisor. I helped choose the cars, procure the parts, oversee their builds, and support both production and post-production. I have some cool stories to tell about what it was like to build these cars and to work with the cast. So follow along as I tell the stories. Let's jump in. One of my favorite sequences in Too Fast, Too Furious was the warehouse scramble scene. The thought of it was actually quite insane, and the production meeting went something like this. Okay, for this scene we're going to put 200 cars in a warehouse and have them storm out of it at the same time. What? But John, we don't have 200 stunt drivers. That's okay, we'll let their owners drive their cars. 2 days later, it's in the script, which means what will happen. If it's in the script, it's going to happen. As you can probably guess, it's highly unusual for owners of cars to serve as stunt drivers in a major motion picture. There are many reasons, not the least of which are insurance purposes. In fact, it's pretty much unheard of, but in this case, we had little choice. That's because this scene required hundreds of cars to act as a diversion for our heroes of the film to make their escape, and this actually made sense if you think about it. The first step in this process was finding the cars and drivers. To do this, I was asked to put together a car casting call which was to be held in the parking lot of Homestead Speedway in South Florida. Fortunately, I had the help of 2 local tuner car clubs, the Jade Crew and the All-Stars from Florida. James Bennett and Neil Chin were the leaders of those 2 clubs respectively. When the big day came, the director, John Singleton, and about 24 members of the production crew came out to personally review the cars. We wanted the warehouse scene to be representative of the local car scene, and so everyone was welcome. It didn't matter if your car was a foreign car or domestic car, if it was Stance, JDM, dub-styled, or a muscle car, we'd consider it. On the big day, about 500 cars showed up. Each car received a number that was written onto their windshield for easy identification. We ended up selecting a total of 192 cars out of that bunch. But selecting these cars was no easy job. The diversity of cars was absolutely amazing. We had it all. Muscle cars, old and new, race cars, pickup trucks, JDM cars, show cars, modified tuner cars, VIP style cars, and everything in between. It was a cross between JDM, dub, muscle cars, and lowriders. Many of these cars were all very well constructed and very detailed. It would be hard to choose for anyone, let alone a director that knew little about cars. Director John Singleton went up and down every aisle in a big white Ford Econoline van as it traversed every row of cars at low speed. When he saw something he liked, the van stopped and he'd jump out and take a closer look. His van came to a screaming halt when he got a look at this young lady, the lovely, luscious Victoria Vo. Victoria and I knew each other from my involvement in the car scene when I was the executive director of Naira, the drag racing series that often traveled to Florida. Victoria had showed up in a cute little outfit, and when John saw her, he immediately cast her as one of the supporting actresses for a role as one of Suki's girls. You may remember her, I like to call her Lollipop Girl. After that discussion, John and the production team made their final choices for these cars, most of which would serve as background cars at the first race, then would appear again in the warehouse scramble scene. The warehouse was located at 2217 Northwest 5th Avenue in Miami, Florida, in what is now known as the Mana Wynwood Convention Center. These pictures show what it looks like today. It looks very different now than it did back in 2002. Filming in the scene was to take place on November 21st, 2002. This was a complex scene with lots of moving parts. For starters, we needed more than 24 police cars. David Martyr, who was my boss on this movie, went to the city of Miami, who was literally about to put up their outdated police cars up for sale at an auction. David asked them how much they were expected to bring at auction, and he was told that they may fetch up to $9,000 each. Without missing a beat, David said, "We'll take them," and he bought every single one of them. Within days, they were at the picture car warehouse. As we were going through the cars, we found all kinds of stuff, bags of weed, underwear, and even a loaded gun. Presumably, all of these items were hidden by prisoners sitting in the back seat, or at least I like to think that. With the police cars now secured, we turned our attention to the other vehicles. Obviously, we couldn't turn 200 untrained drivers loose for such an important scene, so it had to be carefully choreographed. We started by designating the Dodge Ram trucks as our trailblazers. These trucks were given to us by Dodge as they were very interested in getting the Dodge brand into these movies. We had already denied use of the Dodge Neon SRT4, and as a compromise, we took advantage of the use of their trucks and of some Vipers. The trucks would be used to smash through the police car blockade. While it looked like these trucks easily drove up and over the police cars, the reality is that in this shot, where the gold-colored truck easily drives up onto the hood of the cop car, we use cables and pulleys to do that. In other words, don't try this at home, kids. Preparing for the scene also meant that our drivers of these cars would need to be instructed as to where to go when the doors rolled up. How did we do this? If you look at this freeze frame, you'll see that out of each door, the cars tend to follow the lead car in a single column. Each of the lead cars were reused from the first movie, including the Civics, the Integras, and the Eclipses. The MR2 Spyders, now each painted a different color, were driven by stunt drivers. In this configuration, it was basically a simple case of follow the leader, which each leader being a well-trained stunt driver. As long as they stayed in their line, nothing bad would happen. As the scene progresses, we're treated to many different shots of our street racers fleeing. In most of these shots, it was a stunt driver in a reused and repainted car that we had left over from the first movie, as I just mentioned. But if you know what you're looking for, you can tell which of these cars were reused from the first film. Like here, or here, or here, here again, also here, these over here, this one over here, and this one. On film, though, it was a spectacular scene because some people love the excitement of a police chase. Of course, it's all fun and games in real life until you get caught, locked up in a jail, and become Bubba's bitch, but on the big screen, it's fun to see. That's not to say, though, that filming went off perfectly. In fact, in one of our rehearsals, one of our stunt drivers got a little confused and drove off the edge of a warehouse dock, and the car smashed into the pavement below. The RX-7 he was driving was significantly damaged, as you could probably guess, but it was repaired in time for the first scene. One thing that might surprise you, though, is that neither Paul Walker nor Tyrese were on set for the filming of this scene. Their doubles were used in their place. You can tell that because in each of these shots, you never see their faces, and that's because we soon find out they weren't driving them in the movie, but audiences don't get to find this out until the end of the scene. Of course, the movie goes on, culminating in the boat jump scene a little later, but as far as this scene goes, it was a wrap. After this scene was shot, most of the cars that we used in the scene never worked again. Those included the MR2 Spyders, the Supras, the RX-7s, the Civics, the Integras, and the Lancers, among others. After the movie, many of these cars were sold off at auctions in the mid-2000s, and back around 2005 and 2006, the Fast and Furious movies were really nothing special. Audiences seemed to have forgot about them. The cars were being sold at ridiculously low prices, and many of them ended up being stripped for parts. A few ended up on set in Tokyo Drift, like the Gold Supra, for example. A few cars wound up being seen in other movies like Grandma's Boy or in TV shows. I won't list them all simply because it's a footnote. I hope you found that interesting. A couple of housekeeping things I need to mention. I often get comments that say something like, you should do a video on this car, or this car, or this car, or this scenario, all that. Folks, I am getting to them. I'm one guy with one computer. I do all the videos by myself. Be patient. I can tell you that my strategy is this. I'm focusing on the main cars in the first three movies. These cars were special because they were heavily modified. In the new movies, it's the same way. A few of them are heavily modified, but the background cars get little attention, and rightfully so, because there was really nothing special about them. So be patient. I know what's cool, and I will get to it. One last thing before I wrap. As of this recording, I have more than 25 videos about these movies posted here on my YouTube. Please search through them for answers on other topics before you post unrelated questions here. And as always, you should smash that subscribe button so that you can get notifications whenever a new video drops. Thanks for listening to me, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the video. Have a good week.